Behavioral interview questions are some of the most challenging questions you can get asked in an interview process. They're also incredibly common. This also stands with Salesforce. In today's video, which is video 2 in a 6-part series on how to get hired with Salesforce, I'm going to go over some actual behavioral interview questions you're going to get asked in your Salesforce interview, and I'm going to show you how to answer them. I'll also go over what is a behavioral interview question and give you a framework around answering any of them. Let's go. Now, first things first, what is a behavioral interview question? A behavioral interview question is basically any question that calls on you to think about a situation that happened in your past and talk the interviewer through what happened, what you did, and what the outcome was, right? So an example of this might be, give me an example of a time where you dealt with a challenging customer, okay? That's not a Salesforce question, but that's a behavioral interview question in general. And they usually start with, give me an example of a time when, or tell me about a time when, or have you done this, what happened, etc., right? But if it says, tell me about a time when, or give me an example of a time when, that should be setting off alarm bells in your head that that is a behavioral interview question. And when you're asked a behavioral interview question, you want to use what is referred to as the STAR technique. And that means situation, task, action, result. It's an acronym that provides you with a framework for answering behavioral interview question. So you start with S, situation. Okay, what was the situation you were in? Where were you working? What was your role? What were you doing? Task. What was the specific thing you were assigned to do or you needed to sort out? Action. What was your specific action? What did you do in this situation? And result. What was the outcome? Sometimes, when it makes sense, I like to add an L on the end for lesson. What did you learn here? And what can be applied to future situations? Now, in general, that is how you identify and answer behavioral interview questions. Now, I want to go through a few that are actually confirmed to be asked by Salesforce in a Salesforce job interview. Now, the first question is, tell me about a time that you worked on a project that is failing. So, a few things here. Whenever they're asking about projects, typically it's because they do a lot of projects, right? They want to know about your project experience because they are going to be doing a lot of projects. But here they're also asking something that adds a layer of difficulty to it. They're asking you to talk about failure. My advice, whenever you are asked to talk about failure or something that didn't go well, is you try to be as authentic as possible, right? You want to share an honest story that shows that you're vulnerable, authentic, and you're willing to share past failures because you're the type of person who learns from those things. However, it can't be a failure so cataclysmic that it makes you unhireable, right? So it's something that didn't go well, but it's not a huge deal. So STAR technique, situation, task, action, result. My advice here is to give a situation about a project you were on that started to go poorly, right? And in this project, you recognized what was going on. You called everybody together. You made a recommendation for a way to modify what you were doing, and that was able to change it and course correct the path you were on, and you ended up succeeding. That right there is exactly how you want to answer the question. Now, I can't give you an example because this is specific to your career. You also always want to be truthful when you're answering behavioral interview questions, because these are the type of questions where it's really easy to ask follow-up question after follow-up question after follow-up question. And if you fabricate a scenario, it's really easy to run out of additional details or to get caught giving a mistruth. So it is important to use an actual example, start with something that was challenging, it was going off track, you recognized it, and then you made a suggestion and it got it on track. And in a situation like this where you're referencing something that didn't go well, I always think it plays well to talk about what you learned, right? So you do want to end with a lesson. You know, what I learned in this project is, and then you could go on to explain what led to the project being off track or not being successful. And then, or your attitude around being off track and successful. But a good takeaway here really puts a bow on this example and allows you to answer the question well. Now, this next question is, tell me about a time that you struggled working as part of a team. This is really interesting because, again, it's an admission of a time that you were challenged, okay? Which is fairly common in behavioral interview questions. They want to see how you acted in past situations, specifically ones that represent adversity. How did you handle it, and did you handle it in a way that makes us feel you'd be a good employee? So I think here, again, very similar. You want to be authentic, you want to be honest, but you also want to make sure that your story includes resolution of some sort. Because if it doesn't include resolution, they might conclude that, oh, well, maybe you were a bad teammate and that's what happens here. So in this situation, again, situation, what was the situation you were in? Task, what was the task that you were a part of? What was the project that you were part of a team and you were working together and you were collaborating? And specifically, what was challenging about it? Action. How did you go about resolving this, right? In this situation, you should look to, okay, this was a situation, it was challenging, but here's what I did to get it right on track. And then R, what was the result? What was the outcome, right? How did you fix it so that you were able to function as a fully functional team? Now, one of the things that I think is really important when you're answering this question is there's going to be some reason why there was adversity in the team. Why did you struggle? And ideally, it wasn't because you were a terrible teammate. Now, that might sound obvious here, but there's a lot of reasons why a team could struggle, right? Maybe there was unclear communications. Maybe there was unclear goals. Maybe the team was working in different time zones, right? Maybe the team was metriced differently. So they were working towards different goals and they weren't able to function in harmony, right? Those are all good, understandable reasons, as opposed to, well, I just didn't like working as part of a team, or they weren't as good as me. So it's important to try to not be negative about the people you were on a team with while talking about the situation. Didn't necessarily set you up for success, but ideally you were able to write it. Now, if you can do those things, you're going to answer the question correctly. Now, the thing that is tough about behavioral interview questions is there is basically infinite examples they might ask you to recall. And it is impossible to already have an answer for all of those. But one of the things you can do to actually set yourself up for success is come prepared with stories. If you think about a handful of stories that you've encountered in your career, many of them are actually suitable for several behavioral interview questions. For example, what I tell people to do is think about your greatest achievement. Think about a difficult situation. Think about a difficult customer situation. Think about a situation in which you needed to use data, right? Think about big stories in your career and then take some time to familiarize yourself with them. I would go as far as actually writing them out. Write out paragraphs of a project you were involved in, when it was difficult, why it was difficult, what you learned, the outcome, and the numbers associated with it. And use as a thing to actually study going into your interview. That way, when they ask you a behavioral interview question, you have a handful of stories you can pull upon to help you succeed in answering a variety of behavioral interview questions. Now, one of the most important, if not the most important interview question they're going to ask you is, why do you want to work at Salesforce? Which is why I made this video here. This video here is the third video in the series, and it teaches you how to answer the most challenging and important question you're going to get asked in your Salesforce interview. So I am done here, but you should absolutely go watch this video here. I'll see you over there.